Today I decided to play 3 ROM hacks you have never heard of. In this new series, I'll be going over obscure ROM hacks that maybe don't deserve their own video, maybe because they're not long enough, or maybe because they're actually just really bad. Sometimes we'll maybe see monstrosities like these, but other times we might find a diamond in the rubble. So if you know about any obscure ROM hacks out there, leave them in the comments down below and there is always a chance I might check them out. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to Searching for Gems. The first game I took a look at was Pokemon Quartz, but not the original Pokemon Quartz, which was made over 17 years ago. No, this is Pokemon Ultra Quartz Let's Go Blobbos. A very long name for a ROM hack that is very questionable, with not only its game design, but also its 380 plus Fakemon. Now, the difference between this ROM hack and the original Pokemon Quartz is that this one is actually finished. The original one did have 380 plus Fakemon, but they just took up stats that other Pokemon before them already had. For example, the new Fire Starter had the same stats as the Torchic line. Well, now every single Fakemon has their very own stat distribution and moveset, which sounds amazing, right? But if we then take a look at the designs of these new Pokemon, we can quickly realize that most of them are very uninspired, just straight up weird, but also very funny. They do also have their own story, and the game is translated from Spanish to English, so this makes for a ton of great dialogue. I did say that there is an original story, but I honestly can't even follow it myself. So let's see what Pokemon Ultra Quartz Let's Go Blobbos is about. As you spawn in, you immediately get the chance between a new girl and boy character, but I decided to go with the boy and choose this name out of the list. There's also a new professor named Bako, who shows off a Plugoink. I'd definitely plug this guy into my electrical outlets if I had the chance. You still start off in a moving van too, but this time the professor is actually standing above you, glitched into a closet. Your mom's also been replaced by a generic sprite of a lady, and when you enter your house, you don't see the Vigoroth or Machokes helping out with the moving anymore. This time, there's actual people. This is also not Littleroot anymore. We are now in Breezy Town. We go and check out the neighbor's house, and they say that Barrow is on trouble. She also says that her kid has skates, so can run to Pinktown. I really can't keep myself from laughing when reading this dialogue, but I do decide to go up to her kid's room, and she's writing in her diary, saying that a good-looking boy moved next to her. I wonder who that handsome bastard could be. She leaves, and we did the regular stuff, saving the professor from a regular rat this time. The 3 starters are just a fire, grass, and water egg. I decided to go with the fire one, just because of Red Eye's black chick from Joey Wheeler. Obviously, we have to go and defeat our rival as well, and she's once again simping over me. Her name is Ran, which might be short for Nidoran. In the battle, we crack open her blue egg with tackles from Wheeler, and then just check out the route, because it's been totally changed and looks like a mist with a bike path, a cave with a waterfall coming out of it, and just a ton of unnecessary stuff. I then head back to Breezy Town and see that the lab's also been changed to a very big building, but the inside still remains the same. We then grab our Pokedex and Pokeballs and get ready to be traumatized because we're about to capture some Pokemon. I capture an upside down rat named Sever, a knockoff version of Greedent. We also grab another rat, but this one seems to be dead. A Reberry, which is just a bird with, I think that's a crown on its feather. Also a Hammett, which is another mouse/rat Pokemon.
Another one.
But this time green. And the thing with the funniest name ever, Bisbee. I talked to a little boy who gives me a Master Ball as a reward, but actually just got trolled, as he doesn't give me anything. Yeah. This guy's trash. I arrive in what's supposed to be Littleroot, and it's raining here, and everything has been displaced and replaced, and it just looks very bad. But entering the gym to do the catching tutorial stuff, we meet up with Benito, who doesn't want to battle us because he needs to wait for his little brother Ramon so he can teach him how to catch a Pokemon, but he sends me with him instead. Upon completing the catching tutorial, he tells me that we have to go through the Darkness Forest so that we can take on our next gym badge in the next town. As we try to leave town though, we see that our path is blocked by a blue blob. And when you talk to it, it says Blobbo is slip. Take Bulby? So I decided to take this thing with me, but it's just a regular Blobbos, which you can also see in Pokemon Clover, an ice rock type that's basically useless. On my way to the Darkness Forest, I grab a Weedle because it had a funny name, Beavy, the tiny beaver Pokemon which I just named Perry, and a very small Pelipper. And once we enter the Darkness Forest, we see why it's called this. We run into Blobbos, the worst Pokemon ever designed. What is it even supposed to be? I don't know, and I don't want to know. What I do want to know though is why this enemy team's name is Band Ambar, and why do they use Plugoins as their Pokemon? Doesn't sound really evil to me. And guess what? He got his evil plan for stealing this stuff from a TV show. Do I need to say more? Let's head over to Pinkranite Town and see what that looks like. Well, they did do one thing good in this game. You actually need to cut a gem. It's not just useless like in regular Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, but the gym is located in a literal apartment building. Seems like a weird place to put a gym that might disturb anyone else that's living in this building. Let's get to the gym battle itself. At least they also changed around the gym typings because this leader's name is Betty and she does have a pretty nice looking sprite. And her first Pokemon is Gustano. Boy, how far has he fallen from managing Big Time Rush. Destroy this thing with some embers from Reeler. The next Pokemon Streak is a literal stick who goes down the same way. And the last Pokemon is actually just a generic bug with the name Rokorodo. If you hadn't realized it yet, yes, this was a bug type gem. And can you guess which bug type team we get as a reward for defeating this girl? If you guessed Rock Tomb, you were right. The Ambar Thug managed to steal the thing he wanted to steal, and just like in regular Ruby and Sapphire, we have to follow him. This time having to cut down a tree in order to get to him, and after battling an Ibukani, evolving our egg into a pretty cool looking dinosaur who looks like Reran, capturing a Ronslip, yet another rat Pokemon. I don't know what this creator's obsession with rats was, but out of the 380 plus, I guess about 100 of them are just rats. And then we finally reach Greeny Cave. In this cave, I capture a Furby, which has definitely seen better days, and the crazy Pokemon Madnut. We then finally run into the Grunt, and he says this hostage sailor results to be too brave and don't cry. Yes, absolutely. Upon defeating him, he says a couple of swear words and says goodbye wrong. I try to return to the city, but first run into a knockoff Pineco, and then I get called to Bachan Corporations. Here we meet up with the director of this corporation, and he's also the creator of this ROM hack. His name is Barrow, and he's actually a clone of Professor Barrow. Yeah, he put himself in the game twice. That's just a sign of great game development. He wants me to deliver a package to Professor Rapante, who's in a cave on Golden Island. So we run after a weird-looking Mr. Briny and arrive there immediately. After looking around the island a bit, we see that the buildings once again have changed positions, adding absolutely nothing to the aesthetic of this game. We do find a sus guy that says Excess Kindergarten is the hottest thing in cool, and we also find out that the gym is located inside a cave. Yeah, I don't really know what's going on here. As I was making my way to the formerly Granite Cave, I ran into a pirate. I guess in this universe, Archie really didn't have that glow up. The cave's layout has also been totally flipped upside down without any reasoning, and it's just been made really annoying to get through it because there are these holes in the floor, and if you fall through it, you have to go all the way to the beginning of the cave and do it again. I did, however, capture some kind of Pikachu clone named Energitz, and I also fought a ninja kangaroo. Eventually, we do run into the professor, and he says that he's the leader of the Tunneler Troop. After giving him the package, he doesn't really say anything and falls through a hole, never to be seen again. I head back to town and talk to a tree. Yeah, I don't know what's going on anymore either. And then it's finally time to enter the cave and fight the second gym leader. And this time they actually really changed around the gym design, putting coffins in and crosses to really show off that this is actually now become a ghost type gym. For taking on the gym leader, I did do a couple of evolutions like Ayawiras, Mousepid, Urtigere, and I also evolved my Furby, but not as much as Raid Shadow Legends. Raid is currently premiering a limited time animated series called Raid Call of the Arbiter. It's an amazing animated series that dives deep into the lore of Raid. They released their first episode on May 18th, but it's going to be a 10-part series. So there's going to be a ton more that's going to be released, and you can watch it straight from your game. While you're watching Call of the Arbiter, you'll be able to participate in treasure hunts and Easter eggs that are hidden in the episode itself. While the series is going on, there will be a ton of friendly events and content drops to celebrate. The episodes will be rolling out between May 18th and July 20th, and you'll get to learn everything about your favorite characters. You can watch all of these episodes for free, and they'll be dropping every Thursday at 10 a.m. EST. I'm personally keeping up with every single episode as it drops, and the animation is just gorgeous. If you haven't tried Raid Out before, this is the perfect time to jump in because there's a ton of new stuff, and you'll get to learn everything that's happening in Terraria. And if anybody decides to join up right now, everyone will be able to get a chance to get Artak, one of the 5 new characters from the show, as a playable legendary champion for free, just by logging in for 7 days between now and July 24th. And if you haven't played Raid yet, use my link in the description or scan the QR code on screen to get a free starter pack with amazing in-game loot. A big thank you to Raid for sponsoring this video, and go check out their new series. And then we went to challenge the gym leader Fausto, who is also a shaman. He started out with a dip rip, RIP, and I destroyed it with metal claws from Opale, which is just a stone or a gem of some kind. Catalan also gets taken out by it, and my Tigat takes down the final Pokemon Gwyneth with bites. To be fair, this last Pokemon Gwyneth kind of looked like a pre-evolution of Duskull, if the Pokemon Company didn't know how to design Pokemon, that is. I then took the boat through Wheat Sea and entered Flow Beach, where I immediately got ambushed by a sailor who thought this sailor was my mother. He's gotta stop hitting on her. That's one thing I know. After beating up a Seal Fusion, I entered the nearby city, which was infested by grunts. And after going to the museum to beat up some grunts, we finally meet up with their admin. She's very disappointed in her grunts that a beginner trainer has beaten them up. Her name's Amber, and her evil team's name is Bant Ambar. Real original. She mentions that she likes electric Pokemon and they're going to power all of them. This might actually be the best evil plot I've ever heard about. And then they leave. I try to get to the next route, but I get stopped by some grunts who tell me to go talk to a sailor, who then teleports me to a little island with a wormhole on it. This wormhole teleports me to another place with all of these weird guys standing around, and they call themselves the Deadly Seven, and they're talking about a zombie apocalypse. I don't even know what's going on anymore. Then I had to go through caves, which always teleport me to a different sort of cave, and I just ended up getting stuck here and not being able to get out. So this is where I stopped playing Pokemon Quartz Blobbos Edition. While it might look like a funny game on the outside, it really is just a mess of everything. It's not fun playing through it at all. It might give me a chuckle reading the dialogue and just looking at the Fakemon here and there. I wouldn't say this game is worth your while, as I couldn't even muster up the courage to get to the 3rd gym. So my verdict for Pokemon Quartz Let's Go Blobbos Edition will be a 2 out of 10. The second game I decided to try out is called Pokemon Rojo. For any Spanish people watching, I hope I pronounced that right, because this game is in Spanish, but it's also gotten some kind of English translation, so I wanted to check it out. The only real reason I wanted to check this game out though is because they made new Mega Evolutions for already existing Pokemon like Umbreon, the Johto starters, and much more. It's supposed to be a fresh look at the Kanto region, with a pretty slick looking art style and Pokemon up until Generation 7 from what I know. So let's see what it's all about, shall we? I choose the boy character before spawning into Pallet Town. I'm not the biggest fan of the art style, but I also don't hate it. It does need a little bit of tweaking here and there though. The professor then starts to talk to me in Spanish, and I totally blank at this point, but we're here for the Mega Evolutions, so let's check out our starter Pokemon. You have Lapis, I guess this is a pre-evolution to Lapras, Mega Latios, and a new Mega Umbreon that looks pretty decent. Since nobody's ever used a Mega Umbreon before, I decided to go with that thing. And normally your rival would pick one of the other starters, right? But once I started battling him, he actually had a Reshiram and totally destroyed me with Dragon Rage. Seems pretty balanced, but let's keep going. I'm already on high alert about this game though. Upon stepping in the grass, I found random Pokemon like Beedrill, Shiny Sneasel, and a ton more all on Route 1, and I hadn't even realized yet that my starter was a shiny as well. So the shiny odds must be boosted by a ton as well. I also started out with the leftovers as my held item, which is pretty cool, I guess. You know how the rest goes, we pick up our Pokeballs and Pokedex, which is now blue for some reason, and I decided to just go ahead and look for more new Mega Evolutions because that's really why we're here. In the process, I did find some pretty cool Pokemon like a shiny Staryu, Magmortar, but the first thing that caught my eye was a shiny Mega Fraligator. So I decided to add it to the team. This made my game crash multiple times, but I still wanted to push through, and eventually I did add it to the team. I then ran into my rival again, who now had a Kangaskhan and a Tentacruel, which I destroyed with my Mega Umbreon, but I just don't get why everything is so random in this game. Maybe I downloaded a wrong file, that could be on me, but this is the only one I really could find. Anyway, let's see what's in Viridian Forest. I found a Bugcatcher with a Mega Latias, a shiny Mega Salamence in the grass, which I just added to the team, and when I finally reached Pewter City and entered Brock's gym, one of his trainers had a Shadow Lugia and a shiny Larvitar. And while it's pretty cool to see Shadow Lugia, I would have rather seen him in a setting where a bad guy is using him against me. But it got even worse from here on out, because Brock just had a Caterpie and a Huntail out of all Pokemon. And there's this weird black looking crystal behind him, like what's that doing there? All of these questions were just going through my mind as I was playing through this game, but I still carried on. On my way to Mount Moon, I found the God of the Sea Kyogre in a grass patch. I even found its shiny form. And in Mount Moon itself, I found Kyogre's boss, Rayquaza. If you thought Pokemon Quartz was a random hack, this is honestly even worse. I managed to defeat the scientist in front of the fossils, who in the overworld was a guy, but once you battled him, he turned into a girl. I did decide to pick up the Helix fossil, not that it matters because I already have a super overpowered team on my side. The Mega Punch and Mega Kick brothers are still the same. As I finally reach Cerulean City and enter Misty's gym, we see that she's been replaced by Marlin from Pokemon Black and White 2, but his name is now Cyprian. As my Megas destroyed his Joltik and Eggins, I finally went to the Nugget Bridge, fired up my rival, ran into the God of Space, and finally reached Bill's house, just to see him glitch out in his teleporter. Honestly, this is just fitting for this game. I kinda like that he's glitching out. I then made my way over to Diglett's cave, captured a red Mega Gyarados there, which crashed my game, and that was the final nail in the coffin for me. I closed up my emulator and never played this piece of garbage again. While I love the idea of new Mega Evolutions, and the ones that I have seen do look great, I just have to put it out there that those are probably ripped from another game, because I've seen this Mega Feraligatr sprite in GS Chronicles before. Besides that, the game is very uninspired with no added events, only character changes and a little bit of graphical changes, but these aren't necessarily good, because look at this hiker. Why is he blue all of a sudden? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Once again, I might have downloaded a randomized ROM, but that doesn't really justify the crashing either. So Pokemon Rojo gets a 0.5 out of 10 from me. Now let's move on to the last entry of the day, which is going to be an absolute gem. Pokemon Coral. I had my eyes on this game for quite some time, following it on Twitter a bit, and then I realized that they actually put out a demo which goes up to the 4th gym. But what is Pokemon Coral actually? It introduces us to a new region called the Onwa region, and it's actually a Game Boy Color hack, which you don't see too often out there anymore. They have their very own story, a couple of soundtracks in there that I've never heard before, some very interesting characters, but the coolest thing is that they've brought in Pokemon from future generations, and they all look super charming in the Game Boy Color style. They also managed to add in the fairy typing, the physical special split, and new moves from new generations too. So if you're looking for a relatively new experience but on a Game Boy Color game, I would definitely check this out. But let's jump into it ourselves for now. We get greeted by this region's professor, whose name is Spruce. After showing off his trusty friend Munchlax, we get to pick our character. I decide to go with the boy, but after that you can also pick your color, and my favorite one is blue, so that's what we'll be going for. But I also get a glimpse of our rival, and I name him Ryu, because he kinda reminds me of that character from Street Fighter. Upon spawning in, we meet up with our mother, who says that we have to go to the docks to get our first Pokemon. The name of our little starting town is Sunset Bay. Before we head to the docks, I decide to do some exploring around, and after talking to this woman's Gengar, a message pops up saying that he tied my shoelaces together, and then my character actually falls to the ground. Such a cool little Easter egg. We then eventually head to the docks and meet up with Captain Strand. He was supposed to give me my starter Pokemon, but he gave him to his brother, who took them to the lighthouse, so that's where we'll be going next. Upon arriving, we already see 2 other people here, and we're just waiting for Ryu to show up so that we can start the ceremony. Eventually he does arrive and doesn't have an excuse for being late, so he gets scolded at a bit, but then we finally get to choose our starter. You get to pick between all of the Generation 1 and 2 starters, and I decided to just go with everybody's favorite Pokemon, Charmander. Rio picks Totodile, the girl decides to go for Bulbasaur, Bulbasaur, and the other guy picks Cyndaquil. I decide to battle Ryu, and the other two trainers also decide to battle each other. I beat up his Totodile, no problem. It's what I would have said if I didn't lose to him in my very first battle. We also get our Pokedexes, but Ryu left, so the professor instructs me to go and give him his as well. Before going into the wild world, we stop by my mom's house, who gives us our final words as well as an ATM and trainer card. We grab our first Pokemon, and what is a better first Pokemon than Pidgey, and after some more walking, we reach Daybreak Village. A quiet little town with nothing really to do in it, so I head straight to Route 2 to grab a Buizel and a Cottony. And I just have to say, Buizel fits right at home in a Game Boy Color game. While I was grinding up in a cave, I ran into a shiny matchup, but I was going so fast that I didn't even notice it and took it out. I guess that's what I get for speeding up. Our next destination is Glint City, which is surrounded by pink. No, not the singer. It also has a gym, but as I try to enter it, I need a library card in order to get in. So I decide to follow the pink trees into a forest, but before I can enter, Ryu stops me. Obviously, he isn't too happy to see me and straight up attacks me with his newly acquired Snubbull. I pump it full of water with Buizel, and Cottony finishes off Totodile. After giving in his Pokedex, he runs away once again, and we get to enter Glint Grove, a beautiful pink forest full of fairy types. In the deepest part of the grove, there is a very big tree with a guy standing underneath it, so we go ahead and talk to him. He turns out to be the gym leader and decides to give me the library card after explaining to me that this big tree attracts fairy type Pokemon to this forest. So we head back to the library and take on leader Stanley, and he surprisingly doesn't have fairy types. He has normal types as his aces, a Smeargle and a Ditto. Obviously, I just cheesed both of them by leech seeding with my Cottony because Prankster is just super overpowered on this little grass thing. As a reward, we get the Stark Badge, a DTM for Fake Out, and the ability to smash rocks. Oh yeah, and did I tell you that HMs are also not required in this game? A nice little quality of life improvement if you ask me. In order to get to my next checkpoint, I have to go through a cave. This is where I talked to a Pokeball, but he turned out to be the Master of Disguise. Basically just a troll that will show up multiple times in game, where you think, hey, I'm gonna get a good item, but then it's just a fat guy. I'll talk to a random fisherman on a bridge and he gave me the old rod. I make my way to Starglow Valley and a little girl is panicking and asking for help, so we go ahead and see what's up. She says that there's something wrong with her mommy, and upon entering we see that her mom is actually being harassed by this region's evil team. Their name's Team Snare and they're here to steal Pokemon. We defeat this regular weak Pokemon without any trouble and save the family, who obviously thank me for, I guess, saving their lives. As we walk around the town, we see more and more grunts popping up, blocking buildings, just randomly attacking us and causing havoc for anybody around. So I capture the strongest Pokemon ever to help me out and then show this Pokemon to another fisherman who gives me the good rod in return. I then go to this town's Pokemon gym, but it's once again being blocked by one of the members of Team Snare, who call for backup once I approach him. The leader then walks out of his gym saying that this is not a fair battle and scares away the Team Snare grunts. They say that it's not the last thing they will hear from Team Snare, and the gym leader then invites me in so we can check if I'm ready for his badge. Upon entering, we see that it's actually a boat museum, which is very cool to look at, hinting to a potential water type leader. But it's not time to take him on yet because I have to build a team that can actually win here, evolving my Charmander into Charmeleon, capturing a Shroomish, and also finding out that the way to the next town is blocked by a Snorlax. I also find one more Joltik, which is super cute, and an electric type is always useful, and my final evolution was Pidgey into Pidgeotto before I could take on the gym. We learned that his name's Rodney. If you think about it for a little bit, Rodney, water-type Pokemon, I know what this guy's up to. First he throws a Chinchou at me, which is easily countered by Mega Drains from Shroomish, despite being 4 levels lower, but then he has the big Leviathan, Gyarados. So what do I do against Gyarados? I quick attack with Pidgeotto, then bring in Buizel, and use a Bite. The last Pokemon Wooper also falls to my very own water type, and so we get the Splash Badge and the TM for Rain Dance. We then get a call by the professor himself, who says that we have to drop by his lab by taking a boat tour. So let's do it, baby. First I run into a Carvana, which has the most beautiful sprite yet. I then capture a Standler because in the early game this thing is absolutely overpowered. I also talk to a girl who's blocking an ATM machine, and in order for her to unblock it, I have to buy her a soda pop. Because I'm a nice guy, I decide to do it, but she does give me a reward. Not a good one though. the TM for Fall Swipe. We then make our way to Lake Onwa and go straight to the boathouse, but he tells me the boats aren't running today, so we have to come back later. So I called my mom and she said that Captain Strand back in my hometown would be willing to give me a ride. So I go back to the boathouse to take a ride across the river, which is not to the island where we're supposed to go, so we can take an entire new route to our hometown and not just have to backtrack. Just as we're about to enter the shortcut cave, we run into Ryu again. He still has the snubble and his Totodile has now evolved into a crocodile, but as you may know, my grass types easily deal with those too. His newly added addition, however, is a Scyther, but Charmeleon can just burn that to a crisp. Upon losing, he doesn't accept the blame, but instead blames his Pokemon for not trying too hard, and then leaves me alone. The cave we're supposed to enter is actually very dangerous and filled with lava and fire-type Pokemon. But the cool thing is, if you have a fire-type Pokemon, you can surf on this lava and encounter even more fire types. Still a little dangerous for a 10-year-old kid if you ask me though. We find the disguise guy once more and beat the crap out of him for fooling me once again. At the end of the cave, I find a very strong Magmar who I decide to add to my team because it's probably a better fire type than Charmeleon at this point. I also find the TM of Fire Punch and then exit the cave, but now I'm stuck on a mountain with a beautiful sight to behold. You can even have a beautiful date with a girl here to just look at the scenery, which is definitely exhilarating if you don't talk to girls in real life, that is. I finally reach the captain, he brings me to Sunbeam City, but our arrival is way too late because we just missed the bikini model show. No worries because they will be back. So let's head to the professor first. He brings me to his garden and shows off all of his rare Pokemon. And it's not really a garden, it's more of a nature reserve. So just like in a safari zone, I can throw bait and rocks at these guys. Let's do this. He also lets me use his Pokemon recovery machine and introduces me to his old pal Munchlax. But he's fallen asleep again, so he grabs his Pokeflute and wakes him up. He doesn't need this Pokeflute anymore for some reason because he just wants his Munchlax to sleep forever. So instead he gives it to me, meaning that we can now wake up the Snorlax that was blocking the road. But first, it's time for the bikini modeling show. And this is not what you think. I actually just beat them all up in a Pokemon battle and actually won the show myself. But before we can leave, there is also some extra trouble on the island. Team Snare has been spotted near the jungle, and one of their grunts is blocking the entrance, so I use my Pokeflute to put him to sleep and go through the vast vines and trees to finally reach one of their admins. He's talking about how they want to raid the nature preserve and that there is only an old guy with a Munchlax standing in their way. Luckily, we've arrived just in time. Sends his grunt onto me and then flees. So we then have to go through the jungle ourselves, beating up even more grunts in the process until we reach him once more. I do have to mention that this jungle was absolutely beautiful to walk through, even though it was in a Game Boy Color game. The boss then has enough of me and says that I have no idea what I've gotten myself into because he's a cut above the rest and he'll make sure I regret meddling with them. His name is Cage and he sends out an Azumarill as his first Pokemon, which we easily take out with Cottony. His second Pokemon is Eradicate, so my Magmar punches him in the face a couple of times and his Ursaring gets deleted by Standler Stomps. A decent team, but not something I can't deal with. Once the fight's over, he wants to throw me into the river, but he slips and falls himself. His grunt jumps after him, and this basically means that we've saved the nature preserve. We take a boat ride back to the mainland and wake up a Sudowoodo with a Pokeflute, and if you look at his face, we see that he definitely doesn't like being woken up. I mean, that's literally me in the morning. We also reach the Starglow Cavern, place with a ton of strong trainers, but we have to get through here if we want to get to that Snorlax. At the end of the cave, we do find two fossils, but they're being protected by a Pokemaniac that beats the living hell out of me with his Lopunny. And a Pokemaniac with a Lopunny, I don't think I want to disturb him anymore. So instead, I wake up the Snorlax so that the people and me can finally go back to their regular routes. But then something really creepy happens. I find my way into a forest which is surrounded by just dead trees and a very ominous environment. I also find a lost kid here, so we bring it back to the entrance, but I feel like there's more to this forest, so I go and explore further, until I reach an abandoned mansion. And there's a lot of weird things going on here. I try to pick up a Pokeball, but every time I talk to it, it just changes positions to the other side of the table. There's lights flickering, and I have no idea how that's even possible since this thing seems to be abandoned for many years. Once I go up top, I find a book, more of a diary actually, which states that a family used to live here many years ago, but something happened to their daughter, which I guess killed them all? Because there's no sign of them anymore. We then fall through a hole in the roof, on the table underneath, and we can finally pick up the Pokeball, which turns out to be a key. I then go back to the entrance and see a little girl running around the mansion, and if this was me, I would have ran out already. I probably wouldn't even have gone in the first place, but I decide to follow her anyway, into a room where she's watching TV and she says that I shouldn't be here. The TV turns off and the screen turns black. I try to walk around the room but nothing's happening, so I decide to open up my Pokemon party, but upon opening and closing it again, the little kid is standing there once again, saying that I'm just like their mommy and daddy, and that I should have left when I had the chance. Now it's too late. She jump scares me, and my entire save file gets deleted, which means I have to start all over again. At least, that's what I'm thinking. But then the entire text starts to shift and nothing makes sense anymore. That's when we spawn back into the mansion and a Spiritomb attacks me. I sadly enough didn't have any Pokeballs on me, so I had to take it out. But this was by far one of the creepiest but still most well thought of Easter eggs in a game I've ever seen, and we definitely need more of this. But it's time for no more creepy stuff, let's continue this game. I head over to the next town and pick up a bicycle there. I also found a pretty cool wheat field that's filled with mill tanks and just farmers and stuff, making me feel real country. But I also found a new gym, which turns out to be an airport. Upon entering there, I found out that the gym puzzle just consisted of flipping some switches until I got the right escalators to go into the right way to finally reach the gym leader, Wendy. I started out with Duckaroo against Togetic and Fiery Danced it twice. Dodrio did manage to take me out after I hit a Fiery Dance, but with Standler by my side it was no problem. Swablu is just a little bird, so we stomped that flat. But the last Pokemon Skarmory did take the power of my Charmeleon, Cottony, and Buizel to go down. I really should have grinded up my Pokemon a bit more for this battle, but it all turned out to be okay, as my Buizel evolved into a Floatzel and came even more beautiful. With the Gale Badge, we then head over to a nearby train station where we get bullied by the conductor. He doesn't want to let me in because I don't have a ticket, and he only wants to sell me a ticket for 1 million or more. Yeah, this guy is a scumbag. Obviously, it only gets worse from here because Ryu shows up and flashes a ticket to get in, no problem. I also go back to the farms to travel on a Dodrio, which was pretty cool, but you can't really do anything with it. And then I went through an icy cave to reach Route 10, which is going to slide us into the snow part of the region. I make some pit stops by cozy houses, but eventually make my way to Twinkle Town, where the snow is on the rooftops and everybody's shivering. But there's one point of happiness in this town, and that's the gym, which is also a sauna. In order to get through the gym, it's pretty easy. You just have to complete a couple of rooms, beat up some naked men, and grab their keys so you can ultimately reach the gym leader. You may think everything is snowy and icy around here, he's going to have an ice type team, but no, he's going to warm us up with fire types. Charlie here starts off with a Houndoom, which I destroy with 2 Aqua Jets, but I did get Swaggered, which could definitely get bad. He has a Floatzel of his own, which I don't think is a fire type, but you never know, of course. I am able to hit a Bite and an Aqua Jet before going down. I then bring in Standler to stomp it. Camerupt takes me out with a Flamethrower, but I do really like this guy's sprite. I then go into Magmar, use a couple of Fiery Dances, win this matchup, and his final Pokemon, Alolan Marowak, goes down the same way because of some special attack boosts I got. With the Burn Badge by my side, I can now use Rock Climb to get to places we've never been before, but as well as the TM for Sunny Day. I do a couple of ice puzzles, pick up the HM for Rock Climb, but I don't have to learn it to any of my Pokemon. And then in the middle of the snowy landscape, I find a guy in a tent with his Wigglytuff because he's researching an old frozen up temple. He asks me if we can help him investigate, so we use our Rock Climb TM to get there. Eventually we do run into the ruins, but these are not regular ruins. They have an entire puzzle in order to get through them. You have to light candles and have to get to the next candle in time so that the last one doesn't go out. Once you're able to light all of the fires, they will melt away ice blocks that block your way so you can get deeper into the temple. This really wasn't all that easy to do, and you really have to do it optimally. Don't miss a single tile, and definitely don't use speed up. At the end of the cave though, we found a statue of a mamoswine, but after lighting the 2 fires next to it, it melts down and turns out to be an actual mamoswine. After defeating this boss battle, we grab the item behind it, which turns out to be a cracked pot. And our Standler also evolves into a weirdeer, which means his Suian forms are also in this game. Beautiful to see. I really love Weirdeer sprite. We go and give the cracked pot to the guy, and as a reward he gives me the amulet coin. Not something all that useful, but I'll take it. This was definitely a side mission I didn't complete for the reward, but more for the experience. We then go back to the train station, and this time a Team Snare grunt drops a train ticket in front of me and we pick it up. But Team Snare being at a train station is never good news. This time we flash our ticket to the conductor. He isn't too happy about letting us in, but he does so anyway. On the train, we get pulled into a back cart, saying that they need me for something. But then we get ambushed by 2 Team Snare grunts, saying that they can't let us boycott one of their missions again, which means they have totally taken over the train. So we battle our way through it, but upon leaving the cart, we see that the entire train is filled with grunts. Eventually, we do reach the main engine room, where the conductor tries to get my attention by whispering and says that he needs my help. So that's what we're gonna do. I talk to the admin and she says that we must be the kid that's been getting in the way of all of their operations. And she tries to silence me there and then. The admin's name is Locke and she starts out with a Breloom, which my Charmeleon just destroys. I get her with a little help from Floatzel. Floatzel also takes down Nidorino, and Macho goes down to Fiery Dances from Magmar. And with that, she's already defeated. She announces to all of her Team Snare grunts that they have to leave the train because otherwise they might get caught by the police. The conductor is then able to bring us to Luster City without any more problems, and once we arrive there, we get ambushed by a ton of press that have heard about the train takeover. But instead of crediting me as the one that saved everyone, they went to the conductor and gave him all of the credit. I obviously don't mind because I don't like to be in the spotlight anyway. This does give us a good opportunity to get past the press and explore Luster City. And it's beautiful here, a little bit like New York, a ton of people here, a guy that kind of looks like Red and actually might be Red, but most importantly, a department store where you can go up the wrong escalator, and once you do so, the police will capture you and send you out of the mall. How cool is that? We also find a Team Snare grunt who's trying to boycott a delivery, but he doesn't have really strong Pokemon, so we beat him up, save the delivery guy, so he can safely go on back to working. The CEO of Nidcorp then invites me to come and talk with him. So we head to the biggest skyscraper there is and go all the way to the top. And we get to talk to him, and he mentions that he never gets tired of the view up here. He says that his father made Nidcorp to build a relationship between people and Pokemon that could never be broken. But since he carried the torch over to him, he's been trying his best to do that, but he says that things aren't always so simple and sometimes sacrifices need to be made, or else all of the progress that they've already made can be wiped from existence. He digresses and says that he thanks me for saving the people of his city by defeating Team Snare because he knows that we're actually the one that did it. And as a reward, he gives me the HM for Surf. But how did he know that I was the guy that saved everyone? Does he have something to do with Team Snare? All of that is not going to be known to us right now because this is the end of the demo. And that was Pokemon Coral, our third and final game. I do have to say that this is by far the best one we've played today. All of the little Easter eggs, the story seems to be turning into a very interesting thing too, but most importantly, it's actually really well crafted and not just some random stuff thrown together. While I'm not the biggest fan of Game Boy Color hacks, this is probably the best one I have played so far, and it's only a demo, so it's only going to get better from here on. For now, I can't judge it fully, but I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10, because I feel like there's a little bit too much backtracking going on in the beginning, and the pacing doesn't really sit right in some areas. But this can obviously be improved on the final product. So with that, we're going to end off our video. I hope you guys enjoyed this new look at this new series I'm trying to build. If you enjoyed, definitely let me know in the comments down below, and also let me know what I should try next. But with all of that out of the way, I want to thank my membership and Patreon supporters for supporting the channel, and if you want to do so yourself, you can click the links in the description. It's always appreciated, but obviously not needed. And as always people, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. I'm Zwiggo, and I'll see you guys next time.